Yes.
Some other rules that are helpful in the deposition is to please wait for me to ask the question before you answer, because the court reporter can't take a question and an answer down simultaneously.
Okay.
If you answer a question, everybody in the room, including your attorney, will assume that you understand the question. So again, please make me rephrase the question if for some reason they don't make any sense to you.
All right.
This deposition may take a few hours. If at any time you have personal needs or need to talk to your attorney in private, please indicate that to us, and we'll either leave the room or your attorney can find other arrangements so that you have the opportunity to talk to your attorney in private. Likewise, if you have any personal needs, let us know and we'll take a break, all right?
Okay, yes.
No one is here to trick or to make you say things that are not true. I don't know what you may or may not know about depositions. What we're trying to do is find out the facts and the documents upon which you're basing your claims in this case. Because once these depositions are completed, both the attorneys will be in a position to further evaluate this case and perhaps try to settle, or if not, prepare for trial. After the closing of the deposition, it will be transcribed into a booklet form, and you'll be given an opportunity to read the booklet and to make corrections, additions, or changes to your testimony. If you do that and the changes adversely affect Mr. Gates' case, it's very likely that I will comment negatively at the time of trial that you changed your testimony. So I tell you that ahead of time in order to, again, point out that the best answer is the answer you can give us here today. Do you have any questions of me before we start the deposition?
No.
Is there any reason why you can't give a deposition today?
No.
Let's start then. First of all, with reference to the document production, let's go through the list. I refer you to your attorney's list. Do you have your own copy?
I do.
Starting with paragraph 1, did you bring any passbooks, savings account books, or other instruments such as those described in these pages today?
Yes, I did.
What did you bring?
Savings account passbooks and check registers.
Would you produce them now and identify what you brought?
I have a savings account in my name with a passbook. I have check registers for three complete registers, and 1 current register in use. I have all these numbers written down already, if you'd like them.
Oh, you do? That will make things much easier. Thanks.
You're welcome.
So you brought a checking account number 04832, and that was opened in February of '92. Is that Wells Fargo?
Correct.
And also a savings account opened at the same time, 64830, and that was opened at the same time at Wells Fargo.
Correct.
And the Brentwood Hospital Credit Union, 3995, that was opened October 1st, 1993.
Correct.
This worksheet you provided me indicates there's a checking and savings account with what's designed as King Flooring. James Roberts, do you have those records?
No.
Do you sign on that checking account?
Yes.
And the savings account?
It's linked to the checking account, I believe. I just sign on the checking account.
So you can write checks off of that?
Yes, sir.
When were you first empowered by Mr. Roberts to write checks off of the King Flooring account?
Approximately 1 year ago. I'm not really sure of the date.
And in addition to that, you indicated that you have the personal checking and savings account of James Roberts, and those account numbers are 12561 and 12569. Where are those accounts located, ma'am?
They are in James Roberts' possession.
Do you know where the accounts are though?
The accounts are at Bank of America.
What branch?
I don't know.
And you have check writing authority on the checking account as well?
Correct.
The personal checking account?
I sign on the accounts, yes.
So you could withdraw funds from any of those 4 accounts?
I could possibly write checks, but I don't know that I can withdraw from the savings account.
Have you written checks on any of these accounts in the past?
Yes, I have.
When did you first start doing that?
Approximately a year ago.
As to these accounts, did Mr. Roberts place any limitations on you on when or how you could write checks out of these accounts or withdraw savings for that matter?
I only wrote checks with his permission.
What checks would they normally be?
Sometimes I paid his bills.
What bills would those be?
Those would be his beeper, his mobile car and beeper bill, his phone bill, couch payment.
His personal bills?
And those are his personal bills. The couch payments are couches that we bought on my account, but he made the payment.
When did you first start making joint purchases with Mr. Roberts?
The couches are the only joint purchases that we have ever made, and they were purchased probably a year and a half ago.
How much were the couches?
The couches were $3,252.50.
Is there a monthly payment on that?
Yes, there is.
What is that?
$163.
Who was that purchased from?
Macy's.
Where are those couches now?
They are in my possession as of the 16th or 17th of this month.
Is there any particular reason they came into your possession on the 16th or the 17th of this month?
Yes, because James moved from his residence that he had been occupying for over a year.
Did he move in with you?
No, ma'am, he did not.
Where did he move to?
He's living with a friend in Folsom.
On the average, how many? Strike that, please. Does Mr. Roberts spend any time overnight at your house?
Yes, sir, he does.
How often does he do that?
Approximately 5 nights a week.
Could you clarify that overnight, 5 overnights or 5 nights? When you asked that question, you said overnight. I just want to make sure we understand.
She answered nights per week.
I'm just saying, if you want to clarify that, we can.
By that, do you mean, that's more that attorney wording, thank you.
I'm just saying, because she just said nights.
What I'm trying to get at is, how much time does he actually spend at your house? Does he come over and spend the night with you and wake up in the morning like 5 nights a week on the average?
Approximately.
Does he ever spend any more time than that?
No.
Does he assist you in paying any of the bills of the house in light of the fact that he's spending so much time there?
He contributes for the food that he eats, but other than that, no.
Are you charging him any rent for being there?
No.
When did he start spending 5 nights a week over there?
Probably in the last month it had increased to that.
Prior to last month, and it increasing to 5 nights a week, how many nights, overnights a week was he spending at the house?
Closer to 2 or 4
How long did that go on?
since I've been there.
Since your repossession of the house.
Well, actually, no. Probably since about February.
We're way ahead of where I wanted to be on this, but as long as, I'd like to get this out of the way. I want to talk a little bit about your living arrangements. Since we're so far into it now, I'd like to get it in and get out of it. As far as you're concerned, Mrs. Gates, when is the date of separation?
August 1st,
19?
1992.
On what do you base that?
And that was the last time that I left and didn't come back to live while Steve was there.
Okay, and when you left, that was with the intent not to ever come back.
When I left, the day I left, I didn't have any intent to come back because I was upset because of physical abuse.
Okay, I'm going to try to help this along a little bit, and your attorney can object. I don't mean to lead. Actually, I can lead you because you're not my witness. When you say date of separation, it's like when the parties decided that the marriage was over and there was no hope of reconciliation and that they were going to make a complete break. And it's important for your attorney and your child's attorney and me to agree on a date of separation. When you left on August 1st, was that the date that you decided that the marriage was over and you had no intent of ever resuming the marital relationship?
Yes.
Okay, where did you go to live at that point in time?
Well, the day that I left, I was scheduled to go to work, so I went to the Bay Area for a couple of days to work. After that, I slept in my car.
For how long?
I did not have a place to live until September 21st, and then 3 or 4 weeks prior to that, I house sat.
Who did you house it for?
Some friends of Jim's.
Jim Roberts.
Correct.
Were you spending any time over at Jim Roberts' house as of August 1st?
No, sir.
When you left, you didn't go there and start living with Mr. Roberts?
No.
And what were the names of these people that you house sat for before September 21st?
You know, I don't know their last names. It was some of his friends. I don't know their names.
Okay, did Mr. Roberts help you house it at this house?
Yes, he did.
How often was he there at the house?
He was there the whole time.
For that 3-week period.
Uh-huh. $200 for voice for 12 minutes. Starting off with March in the court. Plaintiff's attorney is Mr. Green, Green. Defense Attorney Ms. MS period Cole, C-O-L-E. Okay, 12 minutes. Start with the court. Counsel, do you wish to make an opening statement? Yes, Your Honor. I would like to explain the general nature of this action. I represent the widow and 6 children of the decedent, Mr. Smith. This is an action for wrongful death based on the alleged medical malpractice of Dr. Johnson and the Kaiser Foundation Hospital. Is it not? Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Smith was admitted to Kaiser Foundation Hospital early one morning, complaining of severe chest pain. He was examined by several emergency room nurses and by Dr. Johnson, and then released to see his private physician. A short time later, Mr. Smith was found in the hospital parking lot, slumped over the wheel of his car, dead. It is our contention that the doctor and other hospital employees were negligent in failing to admit Mr. Smith for treatment. Your Honor, I represent both Dr. Johnson and the Kaiser Foundation Hospital. It is our position that Mr. Smith's death was not predictable, and that the symptoms he demonstrated would not have led a reasonable physician to believe that hospitalization was required. Thank you, counsel. Are you ready to call your first witness? The plaintiff will call Dr. Terrence Johnson. Sir, are you a medical doctor licensed to practice in this state? Yes. When were you licensed? I was licensed in 1964. What part of 64? I believe it was June, July. I am not exactly clear on the month. And sir, as of that time, how old were you? 26. When did you graduate from medical school? I graduated in June of 73. From where? University of Iowa. And after that, did you go into an internship? I interned at L.A. County, USC. How long did you have your internship? 1 year. And that was from what time to what time in 1974? It would be June 73 to June 74. I believe June 32 and June 31 year. And that was at County General Hospital? Right. Would you describe for me the nature of the internship you had? It was set up as a rotating internship. I mean, it was not specialized in one unique interest, but in different rotations based on 1 month assignments in distinct aspects of different parts of the hospital, different kinds of medicine. Would you, for example, spend a month in orthopedics, a month in neurology, a month in obstetrics, and so on? That is right. You spent a month in internal medicine, including obstetrics. The time for internal medicine was for 1 month. There was no time I spent in obstetrics. Would you keep your utterances up or relocate that a little closer? You have a low speaking voice. If at any time any of the jurors can't hear a witness, raise your hand so we will know you have been unable to properly hear. Is that better? I suppose it sounds like it is. Can you advise us how long you spent in the area of the study of the human heart? That is extremely difficult to give a definite time sequence on. Did you spend time in the emergency service at County General? Yes. How long? And that was divided up, I believe, in 2-week rotations twice. It would be a total of a month. Would it be fair to say, sir, that before you went to work at Kaiser, that was the extent of your emergency room tenure? I did pass through the emergency room at med school during my clinical rotations because I took calls and I examined patients that were brought through there. My working in the emergency room, that would be mostly at LA County. When you were at the University of Iowa, you were not the only doctor on hand to make vital decisions, though were you? That is true. Dr. Johnson, would it be fair to state that the decisions that were made on March 4 concerning Mr. Smith were your decisions? That is right. It was you who decided, for example, to have the EKG taken, correct? No. That is part of the protocol in the emergency room for thoracic suffering. That certainly would have occurred whether I would have been there or not. Please keep your voice up, doctor, and again, speak to Mr. Green as if you actually had no microphone so that all the jurors, including those at the far end of the jury box, can hear you. Certainly. Are you indicating, sir, that you had nothing to do with actually directing the EKG to be taken that day? That is correct. Was the EKG taken before you even saw the patient? The way I remember the events, the nurses took the EKG, and then the EKG was given to me before I actually spoke to the patient. And did you arrive at your conclusion about the EKG before you spoke to the patient? Not completely, no. Have you formed an impression? Yes, I looked at the EKG, saw some possible abnormalities, formed an impression that there probably was no acute abnormality. I really can't say I formed an opinion until I spoke to the patient. And did you have an impression from looking at it before you spoke to the patient that there were abnormalities? Right. And did you confirm that by examining and speaking to the patient? I believe so, yes. Now, sir, did you write your impression on the EKG record in the lower left-hand corner? That is correct. Did you do that prior to speaking to the patient or after? That would be afterwards. Can you see this exhibit which has previously been marked, doctor? Yes. Some jurors are raising their hands, doctor. They can't hear. Your Honor, I am having a difficult time hearing too. Could I use the chart instead of looking at the exhibit? That would probably be much easier, counsel. Other witnesses have done that. Yes, sir. You are about to lose the exhibit. You can leave it up. And you can be pointing to it, and he can be referring to the original chart if he wishes to utilize it that way, if it is considered important for the jury to observe what you are referring to. Now, sir, in discussing the EKG, Dr. Jones said to you something to the effect, "Why didn't you call me earlier today?" Isn't that true? That is absolutely correct. And in your own words, that conversation with him that afternoon was very traumatic, and the tension was very high. Isn't that true? It was a very high tension situation, yes. And at that time, he also said to you, "Why wasn't this patient admitted earlier in the day?" Indicating that he should have been. Isn't that true, Dr. Johnson? I don't recall. The basic quote that I recall speaking of was, "Why wasn't I called?" Now that day you have down here no perspiration. Does that mean no sweating? That is correct. Did you find that particular man had not been sweating normally? I found that that is also related to the question of when he was having this pain. Did you also find that he did not have any ashen or unusual color? That is true. By the way, those are important signs as far as the clinical picture of a heart patient is concerned. Isn't that correct? That is correct. Why is that? Again, the signs that are being made an ashen color, you are really describing the inability of the heart to circulate to each organ. You are talking about blood to the skin, and therefore the color becomes ashen. And you did not find any ashen or unusual color or any sweating that day. The sweating, again, goes back to, was there any sweating at the time I observed him and when he was having his pain? And the answer to that is no. There was not, according to my history. Exactly how much time did you spend with him that day with your history exam? The first exam in history was, I would guess, around 15 minutes, and then I visited with him before he left, another 4 or 5 minutes. You indicate your visit. You actually went and saw him where he was. He had moved from the main emergency room to a room across the hall. Was he taken by gurney there? I can't recall how he was taken from there. I have no further questions. Do you wish to proceed at this time? Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Johnson, I have arranged for blueprints of the emergency room at Kaiser Foundation Hospital to be here for this trial. I believe counsel is prepared to stipulate no foundation is required for this document. Yes, could you take a look at that document, please, doctor? And could you identify for us where on that document the emergency area was located? Now, this is the back entrance to the hospital. Here is what is really the reception area. Here is the entry to the emergency room. Excuse me for interrupting, but I can see a problem for our record if it ever has to be read. We have got a lot of things to count. Would you prefer him to circle in the areas on the blueprint? What I would actually prefer you to do is take my orange pencil and indicate. First of all, I have a red pencil which would certainly show up better. What exactly do you propose him to mark? I want him to indicate the ambulance entrance to the emergency area with that red pencil. Let's mark that J1 for Johnson 1. I would like you next to mark the room where Mr. Smith was initially taken with J2. I would like you now to mark the room where he was next taken during that morning of November 14, 1974 with J3 in red pencil. The way I remember it, it was the second room in back of the reception area. the way this is depicted, I thought it was a little further back, but it was in this particular room here. Are there any other rooms where Mr. Smith was on the morning of November 14, 1974 for any period of time? No. Where is your office? The physician's office. Would you mark J3 as your office? There is a counter here, an office and desk space back here, right here. And the 15-minute examination that you have described, in which of these particular rooms did that take place? J2. The discussion with Mr. Smith before he departed that day, in which room did that take place? J3. Through what door was he transported when he initially entered? You want me to indicate that, or please? You can indicate that J5. We have heard a description in this manner of a monitor that was hooked up to Mr. Smith. Where was that located? It was in J2. We have also heard a description of an electrocardiogram machine. Where was that located? At least the one used by Mr. Smith. The test was conducted in J2. I do not recall exactly its position there when it was not in use. Where is the radiology section? Mark that J6. That is contiguous with the emergency room. There is a hall that goes into it. Thank you, sir. You may be seated. For the benefit of the jury in the following, Your Honor, I would like to place the Exhibit E up on the board at this time. You may. Excuse me just a minute, Your Honor. Your Honor, we do have a stipulation that the emergency room referred to in the document is about 2,000 square feet. That is true, Your Honor. That stipulation is accepted by the court. And doctor, do you know how long a time Mr. Smith was on the monitor in the first room, which is the most important room in that area, from his time of admission to about 9:45, which would be maybe 15 minutes before discharge? Would you please describe how they took the patients from Hughes Aircraft and then took Mr. Smith on the date in question? It's a transport vehicle, nothing special. Essentially, it can carry a gurney. And does it have oxygen in it? I am not aware of that. Did that vehicle pick him up to take him back to Hughes Aircraft Company? I am unaware of that. I can't say yes or no. Are you aware of whether a telephone call was made from the Kaiser Foundation Hospital to Hughes Aircraft? I mentioned that in the prior testimony. I do think there was one made according to a reference by another doctor. If such a phone call was made, as you discussed earlier, by whom would it normally be made? It would be by one of the nursing staff at the direction of the doctor? Correct. Assuming that such a telephone call was made in this instance, would that be at your direction? My direction was for home and follow up with his local physician. What is your estimate of how much longer you will be? I will try to finish up in 20 minutes, Your Honor. We will take our recess now. Okay, just a little bit faster. Question by plaintiff's attorney. Now, sir, in discussing the EKG, Dr. Jones said to you something to the effect, why didn't you call me earlier today? Isn't that true? That is absolutely correct. And in your own words, that conversation with him that afternoon was very traumatic and the tension was very high. Isn't that true? It was a very high tension situation, yes. And at that time, he also said to you, why wasn't this patient admitted earlier in the day, indicating that he should have been. Isn't that true, Mr. Johnson? I don't recall. The basic quote that I recall speaking of was, why wasn't I called? Now, that day, you have down here, no perspiration. Does that mean no sweating? That is correct. And did you find that particular man had not been sweating normally? I found that that is also related to the question of when he was having this pain. Did you also find that he did not have any ashen or unusual color? That is true. And by the way, those are important signs as far as the clinical picture of a heart patient is concerned. Isn't that correct? That is correct. Why is that? Again, the signs that are being made, an ashen color, you are really describing the inability of the heart to circulate to each organ. You are talking about blood to the skin, therefore the color becomes ashen. And you did not find any ashen or unusual color or any sweating that day. Now, the sweating again goes back to, was there any sweating at the time I observed him? And when he was not having his pain, and the answer to that is no, there was not, according to my history. Exactly how much time did you spend with him that day with your history exam? The first exam in history was, I would guess, around 15 minutes, and then I visited with him before he left, another 4 or 5 minutes. You indicate your visit. You actually went and saw him where he was. He had moved from the main emergency room to a room across the hall. Was he taken by gurney there? I can't recall how he was taken from there. I have no further questions. Do you wish to proceed at this time? Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Johnson, I have arranged for blueprints of the emergency room at Kaiser Foundation Hospital to be here for this trial. I believe counsel is prepared to stipulate no foundation is required for this document. Yes. Could you take a look at that document, please, doctor, and could you identify for us where on that document the emergency area was located? Now, this is the back entrance to the hospital. Here is what is really the reception area. Here is the entry to the emergency room. Excuse me for interrupting, but I can see a problem for our record if it ever has to be read. We have got a lot of things to count. Would you prefer him to circle in the areas of the blueprint? But what I would actually prefer you to do is take my orange pencil and indicate, first of all, I have a red pencil, which would certainly show up better. What exactly do you propose him to mark? I want him to indicate the ambulance entrance to the emergency area with that red pencil. Let's mark that J1 for Johnson 1. I would like you next to mark the room where Mr. Smith was initially taken with J2. I would like you now to mark the room where he was next taken during that morning of November 14, 1974, with J3 in red pencil. Now, the way I remember it, it was the second room in back of the reception area. The way this is depicted, I thought it was a little further back, but it was in this particular room here. Are there any other rooms where Mr. Smith was on the morning of November 14, 1974 for any period of time? No. Where is your office, the physician's office? Would you mark J4 as your office? Now, there is a counter here, an office and desk space back here, right here. Now, the 15-minute examination that you have described, in which of these particular rooms did that take place? J2. Now, the discussion with Mr. Smith before he departed that day, in which room did that take place? J3. Now, through what door was he transported when he initially entered? You want me to indicate that, or please, you can indicate that J5. We have heard a description in this matter of a monitor that was hooked up to Mr. Smith. Where was that located? It was in J2. Do you need my social security number? Yes, we would appreciate it. 572-219254. All right, thank you. Concerning the Huntington Harbor Red Onion matter in 1992, you apparently indicated to us that the license or the ID card you were using on the date of the incident to enter Chester drawers apparently was confiscated. Yes, sir. Tell me how that occurred, what happened. I walked up, I gave him my wallet, he asked me to take my driver's license out. He being who, sir? The general manager. All right. I took my driver's license out, gave it to him. Want to break now? Want to relax a little? No. Just confused me, but I'm fine. He asked me if I had any other form of identification. All right. Such as a Visa card or something. I said no. He asked me, what are all those in your wallet? And I told him, I said, it's not my wallet.